expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production of Glory 93.9 FM.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street.
Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women.
Wardrobe provided by Bahari Bahamas. Visit shopbahari.com. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory, 93.9 FM. I am your host, Michelle Malcolm, and as always, it's a pleasure to be in your company today. Thank you so much for tuning in. So this show today, I am calling it Takes a Village, or does it? We are all very familiar with the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We've heard it all over the years. And we all think we have a good idea of what that means, that, you need the whole community to come together to help raise a child in the right way. But what if the community is flawed? Does this mean that we want to put the fate or the future of our children into the hands of a flawed village? And if the village is flawed, should we then return to the first village, if you want to call it that, which is the family? So today's topic is, it takes a village, or does it? And the person who is going to be speaking with us today, I was formally introduced to him during a forum this past weekend online, in which I moderated, and he was one of the speakers, one of the presenters. And I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he hails from the islands of the Bahamas. He's a Camp Road boy who has gone on to do some amazing things in his life, and was invited by the 6th Region Global Chamber of Commerce to be one of the presenters for that forum, which was held on Saturday. It takes a village to raise a child. And so I reached out to him and I said, I would love to get you on my show. Is there any way that we can link? And he said, yes. And the rest, as they say, is history. So welcome to the show, Professor Kevin Storr. Let me let you say good morning, because his bio is so long, y'all. It could take a little while for me to get through all of that. So, so welcome to the show. Let's get that out of the way first, and then I'll tell of your impressive credentials. You're muted. Go unmute your mic for me, please.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
All right. So good morning again, Michelle, and good morning, Bahamas.
Good morning. Good to see you again. So here's the deal with Professor Kevin Storr. He's originally, as I said, from Kemp Road, a graduate of L.W. Young senior high school. He graduated with undergraduate degrees in physics and computer sciences from Prairie View A&M University. He also went on to earn a master's and a PhD in physics from the Florida State University. Professor Storr is currently a tenured associate professor of physics at Prairie View and is a researcher in low-temperature condensed matter experimental physics. Professor Storr, for the past 25 years, has used his unique training as a professor, physicist, and pastor to help develop people in many different environments. He emphasizes topics such as value, leadership, vision, education, and physics. He has pastored for nearly a decade in Tallahassee, Florida, organized the first annual Leadership and Development Conference, which is still in existence, hosted the Leaders Advantage, a weekly radio program in Florida, Texas, and the Philippines, organized community events and instructional programs for age groups ranging from adolescents to adults, worked with the Juvenile Center of Tallahassee, Troubled Teens, and Spring Hill Road Rehabilitation Center for Recovering Addicts, provides OSHA safety training, provides online physics tutorials for high school and university students. And if that were not enough, among his accomplishments, he's a successful grant writer, receiving over $3 million in the past 16 years, Quantum Design Teaching Laboratory Award, over $250,000 award, multiple recipient of the Texas A&M System Chancellor Teaching Award of Excellence, the first recipient of the CELA University Lifetime Achievement Award, appointed advisor to the Office of the Ambassador at Large for the Republic of Burundi, director of the 6th Region Global Chamber of Commerce, the International Golden Rule Award, and recipient of the Germa Wold Georgis, I'm not sure I pronounced that right, Human Conservation Solutionist Award, named after the former president of Ethiopia. Self-authored 2 books and published other authors, and is currently establishing the Global Value Initiative. All of that from a little Camp Road boy. You've done a lot, sir. Congratulations on your remarkable accomplishments. I think he is well qualified to talk to us about what we're talking about today, which is it takes a village, or does it? Because, Camp Road is notorious for being a rough neighborhood. I don't know how rough it was when you were growing up in Camp Road, but it's notorious for being a rough neighborhood. Yet you were able to come from that environment and excel to the highest heights that you have excelled to. And I just would have read all of your accolades and accomplishments. So what was it about your experience that helped you to break the cycle and go on to achieve greater? Was it the village that helped to raise you? Or was it a strong family unit, or a combination of both?
So thank you, Michelle. So it was actually a combination of both. And so I'll begin first with family. So growing up in Camp Road, family was a very integrated part of life for us. Where I lived was just a stone's throw from my aunt's house, my mother's sister, and we interacted, whereby even today, for those who know my aunt, Beverly Storr, I refer to her as my second mother, and she raised me as well. And in addition to which, her children, my first cousins, they had a hand in raising me as elder brothers and elder sisters. And so I can remember growing up, my cousin Erin, who attended St. Anne's, that whenever she came home, she liked to be the teacher. So what she learned in school, she was about 4 grades ahead of me, that she would teach me. So what that did was that allowed me to excel in school, to be prepared beyond what was already being taught in the classroom. In addition to which, that growing up, my high school, I attended LW, which at the time was a junior and senior school, and where it was located on Burnett Road, it was right in between 2 major constituencies, so Fox Hill and Camp Road. So there at LW Young, you had the combination of Fox Hill and Camp Road, and so I have very dear friends that I made while attending LW Young, but the teachers there, and I want to emphasize the principal who has passed now for quite a while. His name was Richard Adderley. Richard Adderley, who was the principal of LW Young, he was a no-nonsense principal. However, he really pushed me. The things he did for me that was really, I don't think a principal was really required to do such, but however, he did it because of the challenges that we had growing up. Mr. Adderley, he paid for my GCEs. When I was on the basketball team, we had to travel. He bought the plane ticket for me. There were several other things he did that I don't want to say publicly, but his interaction and his assistance really helped to raise me. Then I had other teachers there. Miss Greta Meadows, she was my English language and literature teacher, where I really learned how to write. My love for reading and literature increased. Then I had a homeroom teacher and biology teacher, Mr. Osbert Lewis, and he was just absolutely awesome and amazing. And then there was Mr. Freddie Munnings, and then there were several others as well. But those individuals. Oh, and I would be remiss if I forget my my advisor, who was there at the time, Shelton Higgs. He's the pastor of New Livelihood. He was the advisor at the time, so he really helped with directing me and helped me to get off into college. And so all of these individuals played an integral part in developing me. And then lastly, and definitely not least, was I attended Bahamas Faith Ministries from the time that they met at what was back then Balmoral Beach Hotel. And so Pastor Miles and Pastor Rich, who are no longer with us, Pastor Dave Burrows, who's currently the pastor at Bahamas Faith Ministries, all of those had an integral part in helping me to become the person I am today. So indeed, it took a village. It was a combination of all of those to help me reach to the point where I am today.
So when you look at what is happening in our society today, and especially in your old neighborhood where you grew up, clearly we have fallen off the direction, the type of community that you just described. Something has fallen off. We've lost our way, and we're not seeing that type of community support anymore as it relates to raising our children. And then on top of that, you've got the problem of many people who are unprepared to be parents becoming parents. And I think, I always say to people, you can't plant corn and expect peas to come up out of the ground. So when we look at what is happening in our society today, I dare say we are now reaping the rewards of the seeds that we have sown. What, from your view, and I know you're in the United States, so you're not actually here in the Bahamas, but I'm sure you're aware of what is happening in our country. What, in your view, where have we gone wrong as it relates to that whole concept of the village?
So it is my opinion that often when we're growing up, we hear the term that that this generation is lost, or this we will decry how the generation is so much more different from when we grew up, right? So I would say the same thing. That not that they're lost, but that the generation is so much different than when we grew up. And when I was growing up, of course, they told us the exact same thing. And the thing I would always like to mention is this: that when we think about the challenges in a generation, and maybe how the shortfalls and the challenges that have come about, that we often blame the generation for their miscues, their downfalls, and their failures. However, I would like to submit that you cannot lose a generation in its generation. A generation does not fail in its generation. The failure of the generation is based on what the generation that preceded them. And I say that because generations will function in the confines of what is permitted, and then they will expand on that. So meaning then that it is what we have permitted and what we have allowed in many regards, what we have turned a blind eye to in the previous generations, that really in a way sets the stage for that current generation to move beyond what has already been prepared. When we think of young people, that generally we are a bit rebellious, right? We want to find our way. There are those, of course, who are more or less try to follow that path that the parents are prescribing for them. But as far as individuality and life, individuals prefer to live life on their terms, their options, and finding their way. Even though it is important to take direction whereby it can help negate some of the unfortunate mishaps which can occur. But usually generations will expand and go beyond the norms that the parents have established. And so what we have here, I believe, is where individuals go beyond the norms. Now, these norms are the fact that they have been redefined. So what we call community in the 21st century is different from the community than growing up in the 70s and the 80s and 50s.
Sure.
Community for us involves primarily individuals. Then as far as influences, it would be reading such as newspapers and books, and then radio. In fact, when I grew up, there was no, ZNS wasn't even around at the time. It came about, I think it was like 79 or so. I don't remember the exact year. And then if you didn't have an antenna, that was it. However, now, what we call community, the word community is from the word common. What we call community now has expanded. And the expansion of the community is really now from the internet. So individuals now will see a different type of culture that may not be uniquely Bahamian. Bahamians now will see, and all countries will see, an expression in other countries that they may want to adopt. And that adoption many times is not a positive adoption. Because if you think about it, if you have a nation that is already experiencing challenges in their generation, then they stream those challenges online. Then you have another nation whereby they are not there yet, but however, they see the response and they see the activities that are going on and how that generation is expressing themselves. Many times they will adopt that and bring it into their own context. Now that context then will perhaps conflict with what already is going on with how the nation itself has established itself. So therefore you have communities in conflict, whereby there is a gang community, and what is being gotten from the gang community may no longer be accessible in the community as was raised by us. So I remember growing up at one period on the weekend. Every weekend we went to the beach, and it was my mother, my aunt, uncles. They had the truck. We all jumped in the back of the truck and in the cars. We went out to the beach in Montague, and all the kids were there having a great time. And there will be basically like a big family picnic. We did that every week. I remember that. I remember getting together during for Christmas time and all other activities such as those. Now, when those things then they become lost and they become by the wayside, then there's a substitute, right? Individuals like to connect with others with whom they feel that there is some common bond. And if that common bond is found in a newly established community outside of, say, family, outside of maybe religious norms or educational norms, individuals will function according to that, and it can cause us to reap really strong negative effects.
And that's how we get the emergence of gangs, because they are pretty much looking for a family to belong to. Would you agree? Can you hear me?
I would absolutely agree with that.
Okay. I don't know. I think we're getting some kind of, I don't know if it's your internet connection that is giving us a challenge, but you're sort of breaking up a bit there. Okay. So now we have to question whether or not that adage of it takes to raise a child is still appropriate for the new realities that we face in our society today. I have a clip that I want to play that asks that very question. And the person in this clip is, his name is Roland Warren. He is the president of CareNet, president and CEO of CareNet. And in this clip, he explains why it takes more than a village, but it really takes good families to make a good village. and good family to raise a child. That's clip number one.
It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a child. You've probably heard that saying repeated by lots of folks. It may even make sense to you. I mean, it rings so true. But I want to ask you to consider the implications of this saying in a different way. It's not so much that the idea it takes a village to raise a child is untrue per se. It takes a village to raise a child. You've probably heard that saying repeated by lots of folks. It may even make sense to you. I mean, it rings so true. But I want to ask you to consider the implications of this saying in a different way. It's not so much that the idea it takes a village to raise a child is untrue per se, but rather this saying, as harmless as it may sound, has an element of truth to it that covers up a whole lot of ideas that are untrue or even harmful. The reality is that this saying is often used as a way to de-emphasize the importance and sovereignty of the family. You see, what it really takes to raise a child, especially when viewed through the lens of God's design, is a family. Plus, just like in medieval times, every village has a village idiot that you want to keep your kids away from. In other words, when the village has the wrong values, the family is a child's only protection from the destructive forces that are the consequences of those wrong values. Moreover, sometimes the village is a mob, and no one wants to subject their children to mob rule. Take the abortion issue as just one example where the village of today's culture tells women that the only logical and best choice they can make in an unplanned pregnancy is to have an abortion. In fact, too often women even feel forced by the village to make this choice. We see this all the time at CareNet-affiliated pregnancy centers. The community that surrounds many women and men making pregnancy decisions tells them that it is merciful to end their child's life, or that it's not a life at all. But that's when the family, her husband or the father of the child or parents or the church community of believers who have life-affirming values must step into the gap to provide a loving support network that she so desperately needs. Even the most supportive village can't replicate the intimacy and support that loving parents and involved father, the baby's father, can and must give. So the next time someone says to you, it takes a village to raise a child, politely disagree and tell them that they should replace that saying with two sayings that are more true and more helpful to us and our children. It takes good families to make a village, and it takes good families to raise a child.
Okay, so Kevin, let's get you back in here. And I know you've been having some challenges with your audio, so hopefully we can get that sorted out. You can, because you're hearing static. Maybe it might be helpful if you put on some earphones, but and I guess you can grab your earphones during the next break. But what are your thoughts on what we just heard?
So I was able to hear a portion of it, and I was watching. I was saying that
we're not able to make out what you're saying, Kevin, because of your internet. Let's take a break. Let me let you sort out your technical issues. Let's take a quick break, and then on the other side of the break, we're going to get your response to that video. So stay with us. This is GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. Kevin, it might help if you signed out and signed back in. Okay. All right. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Located on Carmichael Road, Divine Designs Hair Boutique is a haven for women and men looking for professional beauty services. Our state-of-the-art and contemporary equipment creates a relaxing ambiance for you to enjoy while we cater to you. Need a hairstylist? We cater to all types and textures of hair for care and styling. We even have a barber on duty. Need a nail tech? Our technicians provide a range of nail services, including the latest trends. Unwind in one of our massage chairs while you get your pedicure. With our reasonable rates, friendly staff, and over 20 years of experience, you will be in great hands. Call us at 823-1669 or 698-1025 to schedule your appointment. Wanna be pampered? Wanna be slayed? Let Divine Designs make your day.
At Lee Air, safety is our #1 priority. Flying since 1996, we offer scheduled flights into Fresh Creek and Mangrove Key Andros and Great Harbor Key, Berry Island, twice daily, 7 days a week. Affordable charter services are also available to anywhere in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Lee Air Charter Services. Call 225-3267, 702-7127, or 322-1317 for reservations.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Youngevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Youngevity associate.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Professor Kevin Storr. And the title of this show is It Takes a Village, or Does It? We're talking about the fact that, there's this old adage, it takes a village to raise a child. But if we see what's happening in our communities today, you're wondering, where is that village? And do we want to trust our children's future to the modern day villages? Because quite frankly, Professor Storr, if you have some earphones, I need you to put them in, please, because we can hear feedback. I can hear myself through whatever device you're listening on. Quite frankly, as was pointed out in the video that we played prior to the break, your village may have, a good bunch of jokers in it, idiots, who are influencing your children. And so is this the village that we want to expose our children to? Is this adage any longer applicable to the life we now face in this modern era? And so I want to get your feedback, Professor, on that video that was played prior to the break about the dangers of the modern day village and whether or not we should be saying, instead of it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a family to raise a child. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so let me know if my audio is clear enough.
It's better.
All right, we're good. Okay, great. So it's better. All right, great. So when we talk about the village, that I think the key thing is that the nucleus of the village naturally would be the family, and in my case, growing up with my mother, she was my nucleus, and then of course, as I mentioned, my other direct family members as well. However, one of the things is that, so though the family, whether that being the nuclear family or however these many times are defined based on a person's conditions, whether they are maybe with one parent, both parents, grandparents, or some extended family, that provides the nucleus. Now, everything that a person needs or a child needs in order to grow, in order to expand, and to be a contributing member of society, is not found in your immediate family. What do I mean by that? There's a reason why children go to school. Now, of course, we do have homeschooling, but that can only go so far, right? So if a person wants to, let's say, maybe be a medical doctor, that their homeschooling will not include medical school. right? If they want to be a physicist like myself, their homeschooling will not be having PhD classes in physics. And so the community is responsible for providing these additional assists that are needed to help a student be prepared in the direction in which they're actually heading. So there is a part of the community would be the educational community. Now, the question can be asked, which is this, that what is it that we will learn in an educational setting, or what influences that we may have in an educational setting, which may actually misdirect or push a child away from the standards that they may have at home. There's also to the religious, or say the church setting. And in that particular context, then once again, we ask ourselves the question, what standards or what directions is the church providing, which may be in juxtaposed to what they are receiving at home? There is also the digital community, which is very strong. That digital community, we're taking advantage of it right now on StreamYard, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram. And the question now is then, what influences, what directions does the digital community provide, which may be in antithesis to what is provided at home? Then there is the other forms of media, such as, say, print text, the radio. Then there are the political community. There's also the legal communities. What laws are being passed which allow children, students, and individuals to take advantage of a legal system which perhaps may be in antithesis to what's provided at home. All of these communities are present, all of them are vital, and the reason being is because a person's home community, in many regards, will not save them from the external community. So in your home, you may have that, it is not right to maybe hit someone with some object. However, in the gang community, that perhaps that's a different story. If someone does something to you, or maybe they aggravate you or something like that, then you will respond in kind. That individual is not going to govern themselves according to the precedents and the principles that are set up in an individual's home community. So instead, what we do is that we look at what the legal community says, and the legal community says that this is the laws that governs everyone. That even though maybe in your household that or in your community that you live in, that this is the appropriate way to function, then the legal community says that is not the case. So it's impossible really to live and to grow and to expand without taking advantage or without living in the context of all of these other communities. And now the question then is, what is the standard that one has, the initial standard that one has from home, or where that comes from the church, whereby you may reject certain laws, certain norms that may be, say, in one community because they go against your standard for living. So, for example, let's say maybe that of violence. So that of violence may be a standard in a community of individuals who might be a part of a gang. However, then an individual who makes a decision, and make a decision to say, this is not how I am going to live, then they reject that portion of the community. So if you see it then, that there is this norm or standard which probably should begin first at home, and that standard becomes a filter. And the importance of that filter is that it allows us to walk within the most challenging of circumstances and in life, and embrace the good and reject the bad. Right? And that sounds really simple, because many times these decisions are difficult decisions. But at least if an individual is having conflict in the presence of the decision, it lets us know then that there is a standard that is working, that is clawing, that is at work, that's attempting to guide someone in the proper direction.
So that tells me then that we have some work to do, first and foremost, with the family. Uh, Perhaps we need to consider what was the original intent of the family. And if we have moved away from that, how do we get back there? Because you have all of these different communities that you would have mentioned that are ideally supposed to be making an influence on the lives of these children. But if the very first community that they are exposed to is dysfunctional, namely the family, then how effective can the other communities be in helping to push them towards the right direction when their very first community is pushing them in the wrong direction? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and it's a very poignant question indeed. So I think that in having different aspects to the community, so there is, as we talked about, the educational community, there is the religious community, legal community, that when you have a failing in the family, then this is where the pickup has to come from the other part of the community. Now, there is ideals. The ideal is that the family would be the base, and then there is reality. So, in many regards, for reality, the family is not the base, because if an individual, let's say a parent, is not properly prepared to be a parent for whatever reason, whether that is perhaps they were a teenage parent, or perhaps the examples that they had growing up were not one that they saw that was worth emulating, then now the question becomes then what comes in place to help aid that. Now, you cannot replace family per se or parents per se. However, we can actually have other areas of influence to more or less come alongside to assist. And that's where I think the church plays the largest role. Now, I'll give an example with the church I attend in the Bahamas. Bahamas Faith Ministries with Pastor Dave Burrows, and many people are familiar with Pastor Dave's story of growing up in the gangs and so forth. And then also too, many individuals know key individuals in the community now that Pastor Dave worked with who are now excelling. And the thing is this, that the village is there whereby one part falters, another can provide aid to the maximum extent that they can actually do so. So a pastor does not go home with the children, right? So which means that after they've spoken to the child and try to give them good direction, the child still goes home. And the question is then, what they are hearing, will it be enforced at home or will it be lost at home? Now, in that particular aspect, you can see then that what happens after those 2 hours on a Sunday or those 2 hours on a Wednesday, so maybe accumulation a total of about 4 to 5 hours a week. What happens for the remaining 6 and so many days when an individual is away? How is all of this stuff enforced in them? That becomes a challenge. We do not replace family, but however, what we attempt to do is that we attempt to give some direction, to ingrain some type of societal norm, and in this case, if we're looking from the church context, that ingrain principles by which a child or even an adult, that as they move and navigate through life, they use it as a filtering point before they accept what society is passing on to them, or before they accept a decision that they are going to make. So one of the things I think that becomes highly imperative then is that for individuals who are more or less taking up this mantle to help guide children and guide teenagers who may not be getting that influence from at home, is that it's not just a matter of saying, okay, this is what you must do and this is what you must not do. Because when dealing with children, when they're very, very young, you give them instructions. You tell them, do this, do that, right? And the child does this and they do it by and large. As they get older, then you want to teach children principles, because as they get older and they become teenagers, telling them just to do this and do that there is many times this inherent thing to be their own person, and many times, even though they may know what you're saying is good and right, it's just because you are saying it that they are not going to respond to it. And so as students and children get older, I think it's important to teach principles, because principles live with an individual. Principles, they outstrip direct instruction. What I mean by that is that, so if I have a principle of how I am to treat my fellow Bahamian, as opposed to that just says, don't hit your fellow Bahamian. So now, in the context of not hitting, I may not do that, but however, I may speak poorly about them in public. But however, if there's this principle that lives with us, that principle filters every experience that we have and helps us to make those important decisions. So as pastors and leaders, as they get older, I think you want to teach them more so principles. And then the next important part is this. In the process of trying to provide principles to guide young individuals, there's this big responsibility I think we should place on them, which is also of how to influence others. And what I mean by that is this, that think about, I'm going to use Jesus as an example. So Jesus had 12 apostles. We know about these 12, and we'll say Jesus is the greatest leader that ever lived. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to go against that. However, of the 12, Jesus had one that actually did not make it. So statistically, Jesus lost 1 out of 12. So 1 out of 12, that's 8.33%. So in essence, Jesus had about a 91.67% successful rate. It was not 100. And you see what Jesus did. So here's Peter. Peter would have been like, I guess you would call like the kind of almost gang guy here. But Jesus took that drive that he had, and when proper principles were placed in him and he was given the opportunity to actually flourish, what you find is that his influence outweighed them all. And the importance of that is this, and this is going to sound kind of hard. We do our best to try and save them all. We really do. However, what you realize is that in many regards, saving 11 out of 12 has a much stronger influence than if you're able to save that one that may have been lost. And what I mean by that is this. A person like myself who was an educator, when I am teaching and I have students come to my class, I have students from Africa, from the United States, even from the Bahamas, from Jamaica and Trinidad. When I speak to them and they leave my classroom and they leave the university, my influence goes with them throughout the entire nation and on their jobs. Similarly, that Jesus, you'll notice that Jesus, he spoke to the masses, but however, he did not bring the entire masses into the circle. Instead, he chose these 12 individuals because he saw these 12 individuals as being the ones who would have a greater influence. You can try to develop 1,000 people at a time, but you will be able to develop 12 much more effectively, and those 12 individuals, they can reach the 1,000. Now, consider this. For those of us who consider ourselves believers and we've been born again, I can say, I was led to Christ by some individual. That person will say they were led to Christ by someone else. That person will say they were led to Christ by someone else. If you keep following that process down, you're going to make it back to basically one of those 12 apostles and back to Jesus. So when Jesus had those 12 there, he was not just looking at what he was getting right then and there, but he was looking at what was going to come as a result of all of them. So similarly, when we see individuals in the community and the impact that they may be having negatively, those are some of the individuals who you many times want to strongly go after. And the reason why is because you see something known as influence there. And you realize that if I can turn this influence from where they are right now, that influence will have a very strong impact I think of Pastor Carlos Reed, right? Landlord, right? Some of these individuals where you've heard their stories and you see the result of influence from Pastor Miles and Pastor Rich, Pastor Dave, and all of those, and how now they are impacting the country. That as much as I would like to save everyone, I know that I can. And the reason being is that there are some that I cannot save that others can. And so a part of the village then is to know, in essence, your lane, know your direction. And if out of 100 people who are there, I know I can maybe directly influence 10. But however, the other 90 may require individuals who have a different brand, who have a different approach, who have a different way of actually still passing on these time-tested, age-old principles that have been passed on to us from our families and from the church, so that collectively we are able to increase the influence and expand how individuals are growing in our country.
Very, very powerful. Bottom line is this: what we need to understand is that gang leaders are leaders. They just are misdirected leaders. But clearly they have leadership capability if they're able to get this entire gang of men to follow them, young men and women to follow them. So clearly they have leadership ability. The question is now, how do you redirect that into the positive as opposed to the negative? So I clearly get what you're saying. Now, there's one thing you said that I don't quite agree with, but that's another show. When you talked about the success rate of Jesus because he lost one, I would like to suggest that when he picked Judas, he knew the role that Judas was going to play. So he was successful in picking someone who would betray him because he knew that that was the route through which redemption would come. But that's another show. So I don't want to go down that road, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, it is believed that, or proven, I guess, that pretty much who you are as an individual is shaped within your first 7 years of life. All of the experiences that you are bombarded with help to shape your personality, to help to shape your outlook on life within your first 7 years. And we know that a lot of young people in this country in their first 7 years, I mean, it's absolute hell. And so those core developmental years are scarred, full of hurt and pain and anger and fear and mistrust. That's their life. That's their first 7 years. Can that be addressed? Can that be turned around? And if so, what is it going to take to make that happen, particularly when much of the pain and abuse and neglect and hurt and all that other stuff came from the families in which they were born? How do you turn this around?
So the first thing I think is that we have to believe and accept that it can be turned around. If we don't, then it means that after a child reaches a certain age and based on how they function, that we basically have to dismiss them and say start over, right? If we don't believe that, then we are saying that we have maybe only the first 12 years to get them, and after that, it's absolutely gone. Now, when you consider a child when they're born, and so their brains are forming, and they're going through those early years of forming, that the brain is making these great synaptic connections, and what happens is that as the child gets older, maybe somewhere near about 5 to 7 or something like that, the brain actually goes through something called synaptic pruning. What it basically means is this: all of those connections that are made in the brain, that the brain says this: in order to function effectively, we need to be able to access certain points as fast as possible. So what it does, it looks to see, are there any connections that are not being used often? If it's not being used often, it means that, we probably don't need it. So what happens is that the strength of that connection gets diminished over time. And you can think of it even this way. Think about maybe when a person was in school and maybe they were really good at mathematics, right? They love math. Then after they graduate and based on their jobs and chosen profession, they may not use it as much as they used to. Then they have a child, and so now that day comes, so they have to help the child with some algebra. And they go like, man, look, I got an A in algebra. I was good at this. And all of a sudden, they start trying to pull on the algebra in their mind, and something's happening that they didn't experience before in the past. They can't find it. I mean, it used to be right there. And it seems as if, like, I know it's right there. I'm trying to find it, but it just won't come the way it used to. And what's happened is that old adage of use it or lose it begins to take place. What the brain says is this: well, you've not been using this algebra for the past 10 years. You probably doesn't seem like it's of any much value to you. So as a result, we don't need to really maintain a strong connection there at all. So therefore, we'll make that connection in other areas that are of much value. Well, as individuals begin to grow, and let's say now they are in the environment which is not the best, and the way how they function is not the best, at that point, the brain is wired really with these strong connections to respond in a certain way. That means then that there has to be a weakening of that connection, and then even a replacement with something else. So a person then who is maybe trying to stop from lying, right, or some type of vice that they're working on, that they have these great intentions of doing so. And then what will happen is that very quickly they fall back into that thing and they become really depressed. And they're like, I don't understand why I keep doing the same thing. The reason being is that you have a very strong connection which is not being broken as of yet. So it requires this consistency. And the consistency is this: if you're working with someone who is trying to break these strong, bad, negative habits, that often what you will find is that they will fall back into those habits. And when they have a lapse, we tend to come down on them really hard. But statistically, what one should look at is this: over the course of time, let's say that time is maybe like 2 or 3 months, how often have they regressed to the old habits in comparison to when they were not attempting to make a change? So let's say in the past, if it was 10 times out of 10, when placed with this predicament, they responded that way. But now with them working hard over the past 3 months, it's like maybe 6 times out of 10 it's actually happening. Well, we have to recognize that some of these changes are really difficult to actually come about. And so if you can see changes coming, then you can realize that, you know what, we continue to stick with it, because the process, it may not be a very short process that we ourselves may actually want. So the question then is what is the replacement? And the replacement is challenging because first the individual has to want to replace those habits. Now, if you think about it, and this way, think about jail. When a person is sent to jail or they're sent to prison, restrictions are placed on them. And what happens is that old habits that they had before are immediately canceled, meaning then they cannot decide to go out and visit someone, whoever they want to, whenever they want. They cannot decide to go and eat any type of food whenever they want. They cannot decide to watch television whenever they want. They cannot wear the types of clothing whenever they want. So what happens is that all of a sudden, these restrictions are made, and after a while, even though a person may say, I don't like this, over the course of time, the brain ends up adapting and realizes that, you know what, I am not going to get a crack hunk today, right? I'm going to get whatever they give me. They realize that, you know what, whatever this color of the prison clothing is, that was never my favorite color, but they're going to wake up and realize that, you know what, I will not be able to wear the colors that I want. They will think about that, you know, I used to go to the beach, you know, every Independence Day, and they realize that, you know, this coming Independence Day, I am not going to go. What's going to happen is that over the course of time, the brain begins to accept what is consistently put into it because it realizes that there is no other alternative at that time. Now, you can think about what the alternatives will be when I get out, But you realize that this Independence Day, if I am still in jail, that I cannot go to the beach. Well, similarly, then there has to be a replacement, and biblically we call this repentance, right? So when Jesus talked about repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the word repent, we know it means to change your way of thinking, but it's also a military term which means to make an about face. So if I'm facing this way, it means to make a 180-degree turn, so I'm facing in the opposite direction. If you make an about face, it means that what you are viewing is totally in antithesis to what you were viewing before. What you see is different from what you were seeing before. And it also means that the options which are before you are totally different from the options which were before you when you were facing the other direction. So therefore, with repentance, it comes with a different perspective and mindset, and then it requires a person to make that decision to actually move towards that. Now, the changes that occur, these are challenging. These are very challenging. That when you decide you're working with an individual and that person makes that first decision that, you know what, I want to do better, I want to be better, patience is required. Then also too, there must be a new standard that's there that has to be constantly put before them, along with the opportunity to possibly fail. And I have to repeat that. They must be given the opportunity to fail. If you try to protect them, if you will, I mean, you protect people from some things for so long. But however, independence says that the individual must be permitted to wade into the waters, whereby they will either sink or they will swim. And the intent is that we would have taught them how to swim before you allow them to go into the waters. Therefore, the individual cannot just be called or named based on all of their failures. So the individual who's making the change, do we constantly call them that, oh, you are a gangbanger? Do we constantly call them that, oh, you are a murderer, or you are a drinker, you are a drug addict? That if you constantly call them that, what you're doing then is that you are narrowing the possibilities and the roads in which they are supposed to travel. The other thing is this. When students work in my lab, what I do is that I bring them and I show them the equipment they're going to work on, and the equipment looks really complicated. It has a whole bunch of knobs. I know exactly how they feel. I felt the same way when my professor did the same thing. Then what I would do is that I would tell them, this knob does this knob does that knob does that. I know they're not going to remember all of that. It sounds confusing. I have them take notes. Then I give them a small assignment and I said, okay, use those knobs and get this done. But what I do is that I leave the room. And the reason why I leave the room is because I know that as long as I'm there looking over them, they're going to feel really a bit uncomfortable and concerned to even take a chance and try, because they see me as the professional, and if they're wrong, the concern is that I'm going to go like, why did you choose that? That's wrong. So I leave the room to actually give them the opportunity to fail on their own and to self-correct. Because I've given them the instructions, and with the instructions, yes, you may still make a mistake, but I give them the opportunity to self-correct. After that part is done, then the next thing I do is that when a new student comes in, I tell them to teach the other student. And the reason being is that you tend to learn more, or you tend to understand things more that you may have already acquired when you have to share it with someone else. So think about Jesus and what he did. That he trained these individuals. Then what he did was that he sent them out. Remember, he sent them out. He sent them out so that they can go and now use what they've been given on their own. They came back all excited. Then afterwards, he's saying, with the Great Commission, he says, "Go ye therefore in all the world," right? Yeah, and teach everyone. And he said, "I've given authority unto you." So what has he done now? He has trained them. He's already sent them out and got some experience. You can call that maybe on-the-job training. Then what he does, he says, now you go ahead and do it without me. And it's a very simple model that I think that one uses when working with individuals. This is why I think mentorship is very important, that the way how, because as an educator, the way how we teach individuals is different from generally how it's done in the church in terms of how we try to help bring people along. We bring individuals along in the church. We have successes, but in many regards, there are more effective things that need to be added. I'll give you an example. When we go to church on Sunday and the pastor teaches or preaches and gives a message and says some really, really great things, and during the course of the service, if the pastor says a very good point, we tend to respond by clapping, shouting, or giving some type of acknowledgement of it. After it's said and done, then we leave. Now, think about what happens in school. As a teacher, I'm like the pastor, if you will. And I say some good physics things. The students don't clap and cheer like, oh, wow, that was some great quantum mechanics, Dr. Storr. No, they don't. But after I've said it, the next thing I have to do is I need to find out if what they heard is what I expected them to understand. Because I will say something, they hear it, but I don't know if they understood what I said. So therefore we have these assessments such as maybe exams. We have quizzes. The students come up and they give presentations on the topics and such, whereby we can assess and we can correct. What do we do in the church? Well, the first thing is that, just a system, you have individuals, let's say you deal with adults, who will have educational levels from maybe only up to primary school, up to junior high, senior high, college, and maybe advanced degrees. And we teach them all the same, right? After teaching them all the same, then there really isn't any assessment as far as what is it that you actually heard to know if what was communicated to them is what was properly understood. Then we tell them, okay, now go out and apply this. And what is it that they're actually applying? They are applying what they think they understood from what you said, and different people understood it differently. So a part of mentoring then is that it's not just a matter that we speak to these individuals, but it involves time whereby, okay, here's what I said. Scenario number one, you are now in, this just happened. And based on what we just talked about, how do you respond, right? So in that instance, you're not leaving it to when the person makes it in that situation to really find out, did I really understand what was said to me before I ended up in this situation? And the reason being is that we experience things before we experience it. Think about it. Before you started the global paradigm shift, the global paradigm shift began in your mind. In your mind, you had the idea for the global paradigm shift, and you thought about the format that you're going to do it, how you're going to lay it out. And what you did was that in your mind, you navigated through what could have gone wrong and said, you know what, I won't go that route. And you went another route. So in your mind, you were able to fail over and over and over until you found the route that you were actually going through. With mentoring, it's the same thing. You are working with individuals to put these scenarios in place. What if this happens? How will you respond? What if this happens? So that now, when they're in the actual situation, in their minds, they would have already potentially mentally experienced it. And so the decision that's to be made, I won't say it becomes much more easier, but however, it's much more clearer in terms of, okay, should I make this decision or should I make this one? Now, these things are not always 100%, but the whole idea is how to be effective in terms of developing individuals, especially when you're dealing with young people, and moving them from one position, one spot to another. The battle first begins in the mind. That if you see yourself as a gangbanger, you will live as a gangbanger. If you entertain yourself with videos and pictures of gangbanging, then more than likely you would want to live that out yourself. And so what is the repentance? What is the replacement that is given? That yes, this is who you are right now. This is how you function right now, but here are alternatives. And I want you to always see this alternative. Every time that you are around me, I want you to know that these are the alternatives that are provided for you. That yes, you use that F word when you are communicating. Now when you're speaking to me, what is an alternative word that you can use that we will not use that here? So and it really, it's parenting, isn't it? it's really parenting. But when parenting does not have its full value or full influence, what comes alongside to help? And it's because we are really responsible for others. And the last thing I would say is this: it's because when you look at the Bible in Ephesians, it talks about how it says that God, he gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be pastors and teachers and evangelists. And it says he did this for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry. So what he does is that he takes individuals like you and I, who are not yet perfect, and he gifts us so that we can help perfect or mature other individuals. Imagine that. Individuals who are not yet fully mature or perfected, he actually gives the responsibility to perfect others. Why? The reason being is because the ones whom we are working with, they will fail. But however, many times those of us who are more or less in the leadership positions, we see ourselves as having arrived. But what happens when the leader fails, right? Then how will they be able to use the same principles that they have passed on to the individuals who they are mentoring? And then he says that he gives this for the perfecting of the saints so that they can work the ministry. Well, this is a big paradigm shift, isn't it? He gave the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers not for them to have a ministry. He doesn't say that. He says he gives it so that they can train the others so that they can work the ministry. So the ministry is not me being on the radio. My ministry is not me being on television. It's not me standing and speaking in front of 100, 1,000, 10,000 people. My ministry, my purpose is that to train individuals so that they can minister. The pastor knows how to minister basically one way, which is basically this, right? And I'm not minimizing that, but however, the individuals who they are training, they know how to minister different ways. They will minister in the schools. They will minister in the hospitals. They will minister on the police force. They will minister on the defense force. They are to train individuals so that they can work ministry. So therefore, for those individuals who are living that strong and challenging life, and who may be feeling the young individuals, we are training them so that their area of ministry, if you will, their area of direction, if you will, is different from where they currently are.
Okay, some powerful stuff. I didn't want to interrupt you because it was so good, but we like 12 minutes past the time we were supposed to take a break. So, so we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Professor Storr, Kevin Storr. We're talking today, it takes a village, or does it? What do we need to do to turn this thing around? And he's given us some really good nuggets. More to come on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
The freshest wave of glory to hit the Bahamas. This is the all-new Glory 93.9 FM, where God is glorified and the people of God edified.
Photography at its best. Professional and quality service. Warren Grant Photography, specializing in weddings, portraits, sunset images, events, and photo booth, creating compelling images of life-changing events. Make that step today and call 242-424-5678 or email Warren_Grant251@yahoo.com or check out our website at www.warrengrantphotography.com. Facebook and Instagram, Warren Grant Photography. We change moments into memories.
Looking for an extraordinary junior high school with caring, qualified staff and affordable tuition? Then come visit us at Elite School of Excellence, an affiliate of First Step Academy. ABECA-focused and Ministry of Education approved, we foster discipline, integrity, and wisdom while molding our students for success. Call us at 341-8846 or stop by First Step Academy Schools on Fire Trail and Soldy Roads for more information.
Executive Printers is your one-stop shop for all your branding and customization needs. Letterheads, envelopes, business cards, invoices, share and gift certificates, rubber stamps, vouchers, funeral programs, brochures, flyers, banners, and promotional items like mugs, water bottles, mouse pads, and key rings, all with personable service and great quality. No project is too small or too large. For great turnaround and competitive pricing, make an executive decision. Call us at 393-5011.
Escape from the city life to Bacon Air Beach Resort in Piratesville, Mayaguana. Relax in one of 16 air-conditioned rooms just steps away from the ocean. Enjoy scrumptious dishes in our waterfront dining room. Sip on a tropical cocktail, or if you must, stay connected with wireless internet. Nestled on one of the most beautiful beaches in the Bahamas, Bacon Air Beach Resort offers a unique vacation experience. For reservations, call 339-3726 or 463-0182.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 hyperimmune egg powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Professor Dr. Kevin Storr. We are talking about It Takes a Village, or does it? What are the dynamics of truly raising our young people so that we can be a better community and society? I want to read a couple of the comments from our Facebook viewers, and for those of you who would like to call in, the telephone numbers to call are 828-3543. 828-3543 is the number to call, and the text line is 828-2543. 828-2543 is the text line, and of course you can put a comment on Facebook, and we will choose a couple of them to put on the air. So let's do that right now. This comment is coming from Georgina. Georgina says, when I was growing up, the entire block watched over us. There seems to be more connection during the 70s and 80s. Now neighbors barely speak or even look at each other, so you know they're not watching what your kids are doing. And if there are nobody wants to be involved. I miss the days of unity, of family and friends. Yeah, there was definitely more a sense of community back then, for sure. C. Allen Johnson says, the community now extends itself globally due to the advance of technology. The old definition of a healthy community that raises a child must now be expanded to mean it takes a community to manage the new community in which the child will be raised. How do you respond to that comment, Professor? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to see the comment left by C. Allen Johnson? I'd like you to respond to it. I'll put it up on the screen again for you if you missed that. He said the community now extends itself globally due to the advance of technology. The old definition of a healthy community that raises a child must now be expanded to mean it takes a community to manage the new community in which the child will be raised. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I think this is something that we discussed a little bit earlier, which is that when it comes to community, we talked about that the community has been redefined, and that a major part of the new community is technology, social media. And along the same lines, that I believe just how individuals were to go into physical society and they carry these principles with them in terms of how they interact in the physical community, that it's still the same. When you go into the digital community, one carries those principles with them. And this leads back to what we were saying earlier, which is that principles are perhaps most important because the principles become the gateway and the standards by which we interact, whether we interact in digitally or whether we interact non-digitally.
Okay, let's go back to a couple more comments. This one is from Anastasia. She says, I agree that the church should shape the family with the word of God, with the true vision and mission to influence faith and the principles of God. All right, let's go to one or two more. Anastasia also says, we grew up to respect all adults and we dare not tell lies but say the truth, even if you are punished. All right, that's what it used to be like. Now the parents who won't fight you when you discipline their children. Better don't fool with that. Georgina says you are correct about we were raised in the church. The church has lost this generation. The numbers are very low due to some of the teaching. Let's see who else we got here. And Anastasia says, mentorship is surely very important to the family. I agree with that fact. Okay, thank you guys for your comments. I think a key part of this conversation is support for the family unit. Because of the fact that that whole idea of the village has changed so much and in some cases is non-existent, where families used to get support from back in the day, they're not getting it anymore. And for many reasons, parents are feeling overwhelmed because they don't have that level of support. So in this clip that I'm going to play, it says, this is a clip from, her name is Liz Leanne, and she's asking the question. She says, it takes a village to raise a child, but few of us live in villages anymore. So she's tackling the isolation of modern parenting and encouraging us to create modern villages to help make happier parents. Let's go to clip number 2.
My first year as a mother was the most isolating time in my life. My first year as a mother was the most isolating. My first year as a mother was the most
having some
isolating.
technical issues today.
My first year as a mother was the most isolating time in my life. My first year as a mother was the most isolating time in my life. I felt completely disconnected. I didn't even want a second child if I had to relive that year again. We like to say or think that new parents are happy after their first baby. The reality is that many are not. In a recent study, over 70% of new parents reported being less happy in the first 2 years. The average new parent experienced a severe drop in happiness, a drop greater than that from divorce or the death of a partner. The more unhappy parents tended to stop having children. We say it takes a village to raise a child. But modern parents don't live in villages. Villages used to be a natural way for us to learn from and receive help from our extended families and the surrounding communities. Now, parents often dive alone into the most important life-changing role they may ever have.
Okay, we're having some real technical issues today, y'all. In essence, what she was saying in that clip, and I'm also getting notices from people on Facebook saying there's an echo. So, say that again. Okay. What in essence she was saying in that clip, that we couldn't play the whole thing, is that, back in the day, parents had more support through the concept of the village. Nowadays, there are no villages anymore, for the most part. At least not the traditional type of village that they used to be, where there was this extended feeling of family and community. So now parents are finding, many of them, that they are very unhappy after having children because they feel overwhelmed. And she, for the most part, was talking about mature adults as parents. So imagine parents who are children, who are now faced with all of the pressures of having children. So what her suggestion is that we create new villages. We reach out to people for support. We create support groups. We create that sense of community. We create opportunities for people to support us. And she also encouraged in that clip for everyone around new parents to not wait for them to reach out, but to call and say, I know it's not easy. Do you need help? To offer help to new parents especially, because oftentimes they feel overwhelmed and need help, and some may not know how to ask for it. So what are your thoughts, Professor, on her idea of, first of all, not being too proud to ask for help, and also for the other members of the community to not just, think, oh, they've got it, when in essence they may be struggling? What are your thoughts on the idea of creating the community that you need if you're not getting it naturally?
So I was able to make out a little bit what she was saying, and then thank you for providing more clarity, because I wasn't able to get everything. So one of the things is that, when we have these adages and maxims, or these little pithy sayings that become very popular, like such as "it takes a village to raise a child," that after a while the pithy saying becomes a philosophy. It becomes a course, right? The Raising a Village 101 and so forth. And what happens is that the thing that was more or less the pithy saying that has its context, value in its context, gets expanded and then gets thrown out everywhere. And so think of it this way. Jesus, whenever he taught, he commonly used what are called parables. And the word parables is from this Greek word parabalo, which means to throw alongside. Where we get the word parallel from, like parallel lines or two lines which are side by side, but they never actually meet. So what a parable is that it basically is a story or representation that is thrown alongside the real thing. Now, it's not the real thing, it's just simply the representation. And from there, we can garner principles that are only germane to the thing that is thrown alongside. So when Jesus talks about seed being tossed into the ground and different types of soil, right, we can start talking about, well, maybe they put the wrong type of seed in the soil, how some seeds are better for this soil. Or maybe, the time of the year they toss it. But he never talked about that kind of stuff. So therefore you can take the parable too far. When it comes to the concept of, say, it takes a village to raise a child, the main concept is this, that individuals don't have to do it alone. I mean, that's it, right? That individuals do not have to do it alone, and that there are other elements and facets to the community that really help to raise your children. Whether a person believes that or not, it is true, right? So what commonly happens is that children have concepts that they learn from home. They go off to college, and when they come back, they're totally different individuals. Their professors have changed their way of thinking. What they have read has expanded it, whether for good or for bad, but however these changes actually occur. You impress certain principles on your children, and then when they're around their friend, and that friend Kevin just influences them, and now it seems like they are totally different individuals in certain contexts. And what's happening there? That in essence, influence comes from without, and the outside can be the family, the outside can be the friends, the outside can be the church, the outside can be wherever. So indeed, what's happening is that anything in that instance, then this would be your basically your community. It becomes your village. Now we can get involved in terms of how we define the village and such, just as we talked about that. Okay, um, the digital village now is a very strong thing, but in essence, we're always saying is that influences come from different sources, and we have to recognize now that the digital influence is a very strong source of influence. Therefore, in terms of when we are looking at how individuals are influenced and how individuals they do grow, we accept that that how I raise my child is going to be in addition to how the world attempts to raise my child. And my first line of defense is to put up barriers, is to put up gateways, is to put up filters so that some of the things that may try to influence them from outside of their direct family influence, that perhaps that they would not get through. Now, of course, what will happen is as they get older and such, there'll be other filters that they will put in place. In some cases, they might even decide to replace some of the filters that I have actually provided for them. As a result, then, as individuals begin to grow, they begin to change. And again, we generally want individuals to change within the context of the principles, which is why, again, when we look at, and I use the biblical example, not so much because there are individuals who may not follow the Bible, but however, there are these concepts which I believe are universal and good for parenting. In the Old Testament, the influence was more so based on do's and don'ts. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that. In the New Testament, if we wanted to tell individuals what is permitted for them to do and not to do, that book would be volumes long, and it would be in an ever-expanding library. Because 30 years ago, there would not have been any thou shalt not do this on the internet, because the internet as we know it, right, was is not in existence. There wouldn't have been any rules that thou shalt not post this on Twitter because 20 or 30 years ago, because as we knew it, it did not exist. However, there would have been a principle that was in existence way before the internet that may talk about how you communicate to individuals. Now, it may not define whether that communication is digital or whether it is in print, but it simply says the way how I communicate to someone that this is proper and this is an improper way. So you see, that principle will be in existence and work 30, 40 years from now when there is some other means of interaction with people that we may not have even thought of at this particular point. So anyway, we can keep the maxim of it takes a village, and then we can discuss the term the village and maybe it needs to be redefined and so forth. But what it does, the term really becomes just simply like a parable that's used in the context to more or less provide this type of umbrella for which we can use for discussions. But what is most important, I believe, is not so much the umbrella, but rather the specifics, the details, and the values that are being used under that umbrella. I'll give you one last context, and because I work in the church a lot, in the last, say, maybe 15 years, a popular term we've heard in the church is the word kingdom. Now, quite often, whatever we do, we attach the word kingdom to it. Kingdom prayer, right? Kingdom study, kingdom parenting, kingdom everything. Well, before that term was so popular in the church, what did we call it? We just called it prayer. right? We called it studying, we called it gathering, but now we called it a kingdom gathering, right? So does that mean that this new principle just came? No, what we have this umbrella is called kingdom, but however, we're doing the same things, but however, then we may have ascribed maybe a better understanding of why we're doing it, or we grow on it. But the whole idea is that whether you call it kingdom prayer or just prayer, we just want you to pray, right? And so along those lines, when it comes to say the concept of the village, all we're saying is this: is that you don't have to raise your child alone. In fact, you don't even have a choice. You will not raise your child alone. That there are individuals out there who are ready, willing, able, and in fact, they are already raising your child for you. And now the question is that what is the first line of defense for when they come up against an influence that is different from what you believe to be best for them? What are these filters that are being put in place? And that's what the Bible does. It gives us principles. It doesn't tell us how to live and how to talk on the radio. There was no radio. But however, it talks about let your speech be seasoned with grace, right? And so whether now you are talking on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or on StreamYard from thousands of years ago, let your communication be seasoned with grace.
In other words, the principle doesn't change. The methodology may change, but the principle itself does not change.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's powerful. I want to encourage you out there who are watching by way of Facebook or YouTube, or if you're listening on radio. Listen, make sure people know that this show is on. If you're on social media, like and share the show, because if we were talking politics today, oh my God, we would have all kind of people watching and responding, and you know what I mean? But this kind of conversation, I think, is necessary because it is vital to the future of our nation. If we continue to ignore parenting or the lack thereof that is taking place in this country, we cannot be surprised when we see, the degradation that's happening. We should not be surprised. We cannot plant corn and expect peas to come up out of the ground. And these are in my view, these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have to figure out how we can fix what seems to be a very flawed and broken system. Because parenting is, I think 70% of the homes in the country are led by single women. And I'm not knocking single parent homes. I'm not knocking single women because sometimes you got to do what you got to do to raise your children. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we have to go back to the question of the original intent of the family. Was the single parent unit the original intent of the family? And could it be that the fact that we have strayed so far away from the original intent is why we're having so many problems that we're having? I mean, let's face it, if I'm a manufacturer of a let's say a phone, I know how that phone is supposed to operate because I manufactured it. So I know that one of the things that you should not do is plunge the phone into some water. Now, nowadays you got these fancy things that you probably could plunge into water. But let's say I don't have a fancy. Let's say I have one that doesn't work well underwater. Okay? So as a manufacturer, I know why I say don't plunge your phone underwater. I know why. Because I manufactured the phone and I know how the phone is supposed to operate, and I know the environment in which it should operate, and I know that if you put it in the wrong environment, you will irreparably damage the phone. So I say in the manual, do not operate in water. Now I know why I tell you that. But if you decide, well, in most cases, people don't even read the manual. They just get the phone and they turn it on and they start using it because they figured out they don't need to read the manual. They're smart enough to figure out how to use this phone. And then they go for a dive, phone in their, in their hand, and of course the phone is ruined. Why? Because they decided to go against the original intent of the manufacturer. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about today? Well, I dare say that there was an original intent of the family, that our manufacturer, God, had a purpose for the family unit, the original family unit. And, you know, in this day and age, if you want to find out what that original intent was, you got to go back to the manual. The manual, I believe, is the Bible, the Word of God. Now, we're so smart nowadays. We are so evolved and so intelligent and so smart that manual, what are you talking about? I don't even believe in that garbage. That's not, that might be what you follow, but that's not what I follow. I don't believe in that. So we're not referring to the manual, and we're trying to operate this product called the family on our terms, trying to reshape it into what we think it should be, while ignoring the instructions of the manufacturer. And so now that we see our communities being impacted by that decision, because we've decided that we're smarter than the manufacturer that actually made the product, I mean, this is what we get. And so if we are looking to turn this thing around, and you came up with some brilliant concepts here today, but is it the bottom line that we have to go back to the original intent of the family? We have to go back to the manufacturer. We have to get into the mind of the manufacturer to understand what was the original intent and go back to that in order to fix this?
So it is my belief that, just as you put it, that if you have some product that has been generated, and I remember, with the example when I first heard the example, and even with my personal experience, that when if I buy some product and it's time to have to put that together, I'll be honest with you, when I open that box and first thing I see is those instruction manual, I kind of put that off to the side because I'm Dr. Storr. I mean, if I can't figure out to put this together, I mean, like, who can, right? And then after I've gotten this frustration and I've put it together and I realize that there are 5 screws left over and some L-shaped piece, I realize, like, what did I miss? So then I'll go back to the instruction. And what's interesting is when I read the instructions, I read it with a bit of a nuisance, right? Because I'm trying to just really kind of scan through it. I just want to quickly see, where's the issue, let me fix it. Then when that doesn't work, then finally, then I will go and I will start reading more in detail. So this concept is, it's true, right? In fact, as another example, just last week I bought some windshield wipers for the car. And so there were these Rain-X windshield wipers. And so the paper came with it, and when I pulled it out, the paper fell on the ground. So I was like, I don't need that. So I went and I was putting the windshield wiper on. I'm putting it on, and the thing is not snapping in place, right? So then this thought said, why don't you pick up the paper? I was like, man, I don't need that paper. This is what I said to myself. And so at that point now, it starts to rain. I need the windshield wipers. And so it's raining. I'm trying to get it on. Couldn't get it on. So finally, I picked up the wet paper. And I'm reading it. And the paper said, pull sharply until it snaps in place. All this time I was turning it around this way, that way, that way. All I had to do was just pull a little bit and it snapped right into place. And so 20 minutes or so had passed with me working on that windshield wiper because I refused to read the instructions. Yes. What I was attempting to do was come up with a different procedure to actually make this product work other than the one that the manufacturer had already designed it for, tested it for, and put in the instructions. And that's what we do, is that children come along, and for better or worse, individuals, they have what they can provide in parenting many times is a victim of different circumstances. It may be financial, so therefore the parent finds that they have to be away from home to be able to spend enough time with their children. So when they do come home, they can just do just the basic essentials, and then they're asleep, and then they're back off to work again. Then you have others whereby they may not have really learned about parenting. And so maybe they do the best that they can. There are others who they just don't bother to do anything, right? That the child is there. After the child reaches a certain age whereby you don't have to feed them anymore, don't have to clothe them anymore, don't have to bathe them anymore, man, they're big enough, they can take care of themselves, that you're looking at it in terms of relief, that I am no longer having these kind of time constraints that I had before with a young child, but now the child is 12 or 13. I just simply tell them, do this, do that. They go, they can take care of themselves. But however, the things that are needed in order for them to grow into a meaningful, contributing adult in the society, that they no longer have it. Now, think about how we parent younger children as opposed to older children. When they're younger, we give them these directions every morning. Wake up, brush your teeth, wash your face, do this, do that. And every morning you're telling them this, that, hey, this particular day we're going to wash clothes and so forth. You're doing that over and over and over. It gets ingrained in them so that when they get up, they no longer think about, oh, waiting for mommy or daddy to tell me to do this. They go ahead and do it. Now, as they get older, we kind of leave them to their own devices. And instead now, something else is influencing them and says, hey, today you want to do this. Today you want to go and spend maybe 2 hours on Facebook. You want to spend 1 hour watching YouTube videos. So the whole idea is that these different things are telling them over and over and over to actually do this. Now, in terms of actual parenting itself, parenting requires time. It requires time. Either the time for parenting will be done by you, when I say you or individuals who are listening who are the parents, or the time for parenting will be done by television. It will be done by the internet. It will be done by TikTok. It will be done by Facebook. It will be done by Instagram. It all involves what is investing time in your child that will produce these patterns, behaviors, and principles that now when they are away from that individual, they will use that to actually live by. So parenting, when we talk about parenting is not just having a child, right? Any individual who is of age and their bodies have matured, that they can produce children. However, now parenting is what occurs directly afterwards. We can say that, okay, well, now we have kids having kids, but we've had kids having kids when I was younger. My parents' generation, they had kids having kids. Her parents' generation, they had kids have always been having kids, which means then that is not really fully the issue if you really think about it. Because it's been going on for generations and for more than a century, we've had more than a century to actually address kids having kids and how to deal with and how to help raise maybe children who are being raised by children. We have had it, that's not a new challenge. What it simply says is that we have not sufficiently addressed it in the previous instances over the past decade, so that now when it pops up again, it's this taken as this grand thing that's destroying society. The reason why when we look at it and see what's actually occurring is because, once again, there's a failure of, when we recognize the challenges that have been popping up in the past, we allow it to continue to repeat itself. So therefore, parenting was not done on that front. Now, something you had mentioned earlier, Michelle, was that maybe someone who was like a single parent and so forth, and they're struggling, and maybe no one has called them, and they want someone to call to assist them. And that happens. Now, for the individuals who that happens to, that in essence should become something that becomes a motivation for later on, whereby they say, you know what, this is what I knew I needed, and it was not given to me. So now I want to take it as a part of my responsibility, whereby I will seek out maybe an individual or maybe a family member, friend, or whoever who's in the same predicament, and now I will give and provide for them what was not provided for me. So in essence then, the individuals for which parenting has failed, but however they were able to be developed through other means, then that has to be a part of their responsibility in going forward, that where parenting failed me, I will ensure that it will not fail my children. And if I can influence one or two other individuals so that it will not fail them as well. And in so doing, we learn to really get back to the basic tenets of parenting. Because just as the example as you gave, that if we accept that parenting was initiated by God, and He has a system by which we are to best function in it. If we get away from it, then it means then that we have to now provide substitutes for parenting. And the substitute is not going to be the real thing. As a scientist, when you begin to add substitutes, like we have sugar substitutes, right? Substitutes sometimes have these unintended consequences. Much like how when you take some medicine to treat some illness, we all know when you listen to the advertisement on television and it says possible side effects may cause blindness, may cause your ear to ring, and you begin to wonder like, oh my God, are the side effects actually worth it? Well, similarly, when we decide to substitute for parenting, we have these side effects. And the side effects are what we're seeing in society, not just today, but we saw when we were growing up. And now parents saw when they were growing up. Now, maybe the intensity of it is more. We can hear about it more because now if some crime occurs right there on Kemp Road, someone there with a phone is going to be recording it so that it can be seen. You go back 20, 30 years, you had to wait for someone to tell you about it, or you had to read about it in the newspaper. So therefore, too, as things occur more, we can hear about it more quickly.
Take a break, Kevin. But you know what? Something you said just now made me think of something that it doesn't just stop with that generation, but you're talking now the side effects continuing for generations to come. Very, very powerful. We have to take a quick break. We got to pay our bills, got to make sure our sponsors get their ads in, y'all. So let's take this final break. And then when we come back, we're going to wrap everything up. This is GPS.
Ocean blue is the best in seafood, fresh out the water and affordable too, yeah. We got fish, conch, lobster, shrimp, everything you want. Ocean blue got it. Ocean blue, friendly and clean, best service you ever seen. Ocean blue is the best in seafood, fresh out the water and affordable too, Ocean blue seafood, we are here for you. Ocean blue seafood, no one else will do. Ocean Blue Seafood, located on Burnett Road. Contact us at 393-2160.
At the Shirley Street Plaza, you'll find Le Petit Gourmet, a small cafe that's big on flavor. Handcrafted delights made with love will not only please your palate, but feed your soul. Call us at 394-1251. 8 to 12 minutes is all it takes for a burglar to rob your home or business. Security Systems International provides professional and affordable solutions for both. Call 396-5000 for your customized quote. Gwen's Alterations provides professional services for all your tailoring needs, including face masks to keep you safe and in style. A stitch in time saves 9. So call us today at 393-6227.
For all your building needs, it's Carib Construction and Project Management on Gladstone Road. We build it all. Schools, homes, hotels, and more, including structures requiring a Phase 3 electrical contractor. We also provide project management services. The first step towards your dream building begins at Carib Construction and Project Management. Call us at 376-1556 or 341-4466.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
And welcome back to the last stretch of the show, GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Professor Dr. Kevin Storr, a Camp Road boy who has gone on to do wonderful things, now living in the United States and working there. Professor, you brought us some really very powerful nuggets of information during the show today that can help us to make better choices and decisions as it relates to improving our community by working together. The show's topic was, it takes a village, or does it? And we know that the traditional village is no more. The village that I grew up in is no more. But that does not mean that with the new realities that we face, that we can't still apply the principles of the village. And this is the point, if I had to sum it all up based on everything that you would have taught us today, that is, I think, one of the most powerful points of what you delivered today, the fact that principles never change. And so our villages may look different, maybe, you have all of these outside influences that were not around when we were growing up, but the fact remains that principles do not change. So in the final few minutes of the show, your word of advice to parents out there, whether first-time parents or parents who have been around this go round several times. How do they, in real terms, I need you to put it in a nutshell for me, but how do they, in practical, real terms, ensure that the principles that they teach their children, well, first of all, they have to teach them, but if they are teaching their children, that those principles are able to stick in the face of being bombarded with all of the other influences that will come their way? What are some practical tips that you offer to our parents today in the final minutes of the show?
Sure. So what I would tell parents is this, that often teachers will talk about children and say that they have a lot of potential. And when they tell them that, that's normally a negative thing, like, has a lot of potential, meaning that they're not doing anything. Well, in reality, the parents really are the potential for the children. In physics, when we talk about potential, it is not something that the thing has, but rather it has to do with where the thing is placed. You place the thing in the potential, and then that defines how much energy the thing has, what is able to do. The parents, you are the potential for your children, meaning then that when children are placed inside your environment, that will help determine how far they can go. The gangs, they are the potential for the children. When they are placed inside that environment, that determines how far they will go. The church is the potential for the children. When they are placed in that environment, that determines how far they can go. Therefore, it's important then, as a simple beginning course, that the parent must determine how much they are able to provide so that when the child is in their environment, that they can expand and that they can grow. The parents are the potential of the students and of the children. When the children are placed within their potential, it defines their energy. It defines who they are, what they can do, and in a way, who they can potentially become. The teachers are the potential for the students, and because based on what they provide and the students interact with, that determines how far they can go academically. So what I say to parents is this: begin now to develop yourself. Learn about how to be an important parent. Go take a course, take a seminar. So many of the churches have many great things available. There are books, stuff online, and then of course talk to friends and family members in terms of how you can better influence your children, how to communicate to them, even learning how your children learn. Some children will learn better whereby you tell them. Others you have to show them. Some of them you have to have them involved in things. That the first response for one parent may not be for the other, but the principle is still the same. So the parent must educate themselves so that they can better provide a better environment for their children to grow.
We're out of time. It's like a minute to one, so I've got to go. Thank you so much for everything that you delivered to us today. I truly appreciate you being here, and I'm sure that our listeners got some good stuff out of this. Guys, please like and share the show, especially if you know anyone who's struggling with parenting. I want to end the show with a text that I just received. It says, "Good afternoon, great topic. Individuals make up the family unit, and sadly, we as individuals have lost the purpose for our existence. That being said, the purpose for the family unit, if carried out in accordance with our Creator's plan, will greatly help to properly mold not only our children, but maybe even the adults of the nation." Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you once again, Professor, for being here. I'm Michelle Malcolm, y'all. That's going to do it for today's show. On behalf of all of my sponsors, which make today's show possible, thanks so much for tuning in. And we will see you tomorrow. It's going to be a TGIF Friday show, open lines. We're going to hear from you about the week that was. I'm Michelle Malcolm once again. Have a good afternoon, everybody.